right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. You see on the screen here, we do have State Representative Dan Sullivan in studio. Dan, how's it going, sir?
Good to be here, Paul. I appreciate you inviting me in, and glad to have you back from vacation.
Absolutely, yeah. And just tell us real quick, how's the campaign for state senate going?
Well, it's a little bit slow right now. I am going to meetings with different groups and small group meetings. Would love to meet with any of your listeners in District 21. If they'd like to meet with me, be sure and just give me a call. You know, I had meetings yesterday, have another one today, and several a day, usually just kind of hearing what the people think and what they're feeling and what issues are important to them. So it's going well, and we'll be cranking up really hard here about the 1st of October, scheduling more events and doing a few more things.
Yeah, because, I mean, you know, we're getting kind of towards the end of this year, and then I guess, you know, after Christmas, it's only a few months until the actual primary.
Yeah, in March. And, of course, there's things that spike activity. You know, Walmart's recent decision and Moms Demand Action on guns sparks a lot of interest on Facebook and a lot of interest in discussion. And, you know, my opponent supported Moms Demand Action, or they supported him in gun control and red flag legislation. So those provide opportunities for me to discuss the issues that are important to our district and our region.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that Walmart is now like the biggest supporter of local gun shops because of their decision to no longer sell handgun ammunition.
You know what? That's I hadn't thought about that, but unfortunately now we have our state government, our city government, going to get involved in a shooting range and take that business back away from our local patrons, local businesses.
So talk about this. So early voting is underway in Jonesboro for a full percent or a cent tax increase, a sales tax increase.
Correct.
What are your thoughts on that? Half of it's for police and fire. The other half is for, well, we don't really know what the other half is for. We just kind of have a list of things that they might get to at some point.
Sure. And that's a really good point. You know, my issue has been, Paul, that if the voters want to tax themselves, vote that way. If they don't, vote the other way. And my job as a state legislator is to educate people on how important being discerning in your vote, and what are the filters before you vote for or against. How do you filter your vote? You know, for example, does it increase government or does it decrease government's power? Does it does it give the people the power, or is it taking the power away from the people? And a really good example of that, you know, and a couple of things in this vote. One is the special election. You know, I have strongly opposed special elections because it gives a very powerful special interest group an unusual opportunity to get their message out the way they want, to craft a message that allows them to pass a tax that normally may not pass in a general election. And I think you've seen the numbers, and I imagine most of your voters are familiar with the statistics, but I think something like 80% of our tax increases in the last, 10 years have come through special elections just like this. So one of the issues is, do you support special elections? And I think that should frame how you vote in this election.
Wow.
Because whether you're voting for it or against it, this is certainly a vote for a special election if the tax passes, which will then be a signal to small special interest groups who are very well funded. And I think this, the group that's supporting this, they're essentially a lobbying group. And they're a lobbying group that has raised well over $100,000 to pass a tax against the people that are on the other side of this issue. Probably have, I don't know what their numbers are, probably less than 10,000. But so again, a special interest, that's the goal of a special interest group, is to frame a special election, well fund and market it. And I tell you what, they've done a great job of marketing their ideas and sharing with the public what the benefits are. You know, another foundational principle, I think, that we in state government try to do, and I thought we had in city government done a pretty good job of that, local government, but it's combining issues. You know, this election combines two issues. The tax to help our fire and police that a lot of people favor. and then the tax for amenities that are out there, whatever they might be. They're combining those and giving people a sense that if I favor police and fire, the only choice I have is to vote yes on this. I really oppose that since we did that during the legislative session. The administration would combine a tax cut and a tax increase, and it was overall a tax increase. But and we did it with, I think 2 years ago with our veterans. We brought the veterans in.
The veterans were used as pawns
absolutely.
in order to get something else.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you didn't vote for it, then you were opposed to our veterans.
Exactly.
The same thing here. If you don't vote for this, you're opposed to our fire and our police. So I just think those are two big issues that I hate to see our local community being pushed in this direction, because those are fundamentally and foundationally bad ideas. Jefferson said, when the people and I can't quote him exactly, but he talked about when the people make the wrong decision, our choice is not to take the people's power away, but our choice is to educate the people. And I see that as my responsibility in this election, is not to tell people how to vote, but to help educate them on what they're voting for. So if you are for combining these issues rather than separating them, and if you are for special elections, I guess we're going to see. But I guess the last thing we need, Paul, is now jump back to these special elections. People have learned, especially in Northeast Arkansas, the impact of special elections. We've defeated several of those recently in the last few years. And, I think people have gotten the word out that what these special elections are and how it's about a special interest group funding something that they want, and then you match it up and you can pass things. So I think our turnout can be pretty good. I just encourage everybody, whether you're for it or against it, let's get out and vote and let the voice of the people be heard.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad. You mentioned special election, and that's something that I've definitely talked about. The Arkansas Center for Research and Economics, those numbers, the study they did from 1980 until a couple years ago. You've got a 76 or 77% chance of passing it in a special election, passing your tax increase in a special election, and that's when turnout is lower. And so definitely need to get out and go vote. The other thing, and this is something that I know that Team Jonesboro has said about special election, is that when the city council voted for the International Property Maintenance Code, there was a special election that was called to try to repeal that. But the difference there was it was a citizen-led special election where you had to collect signatures in order to do it. So, I think there's something to be said that if you're going to have one, that's a much better way to do it.
Our state law that we ran, Paul, did have exceptions, and there were things that were allowed. You can have special election under certain conditions, and we can talk about what those conditions might be. Let me bring up another point that really concerns me. You're hearing a lot now about private-public cooperation and joint ventures with the public and the private. I don't think our founding principles talk about our government being partners with the private sector. Government's job is not to invest in private business. Government's job is to create an environment where the private sector can grow. And when the government does that with shared, things like roads and bridges and infrastructure, police and fire, when the government provides that environment where private businesses can grow, then the nation flourishes. Since 1776.
Yeah.
So we have been very successful with the private sector and the public sector, with the public sector, the government, creating an environment. We have been the most prosperous nation on earth ever because of our view of the private sector and the public sector. And over time, we know that government wants to grow government. That's its natural inclination is for government to increase and individual liberty to diminish. That's just been the way it is. So we have to guard that principle. And now we have people. I think our mayor has said he's really advocating, the Jonesboro mayor is strongly advocating public-private partnerships. So I don't know what exactly he means by that, but what I hear is we're going to take public money and we're going to invest it in private enterprise, thereby allowing these kinds of things we're talking about, quality of life issues, the government's going to own those. That has not been the way we've grown. Jonesboro has grown tremendously. When I went here back in the 70s, the town has just prospered and grown. There have been recent studies come out about Northeast Arkansas. We're one of the fastest growing parts of our state. And now at the tax rates we had. And now we're going to increase our taxes. I had a really interesting post on Facebook. And by the way, people, I really appreciate your comments on Facebook. We've had some great discussions. I've ended up meeting with several people. And one thing we have done is foster great debate over freedom and economic issues. So I really appreciate that. But I had a guy ask me on Facebook, Dan, what if we could create a tax that would tax the people coming into our state and allow us to make money off of those people coming into our state? Would you do that? And I said, well, first of all, we've been trying to cut taxes to bring people into our state. And we've been very successful at that. Our governor has promoted tax cuts and how our tax cuts have brought people into our state, how we're trying to match our neighbors, Texas and Tennessee. We're trying to make our tax structure look more like theirs to bring money in. And so I responded to that post on Facebook. We're actually already doing that, not by raising taxes, but by cutting taxes.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and people, those are things, that's part of that filter I think people need to understand. And as you know, Paul, when you're up against a very powerful lobby, very powerful, well-funded lobby, it's really hard to get your message out. In my races I've run, I'll jump back to my race. I've battled against one of the most powerful lobbies in the state, in the medical lobby. They have increased cost. Every time we have an opportunity to reduce cost, they defeat it. They're a prime example of this public-private monopoly they've set up, that they take the public's money and their private money and refuse to allow scope of practice issues, refuse to allow the people choice. And it really concerns me when locally we head down that same trail, that we're going to have this public-private venture. I don't know exactly how I feel, but it bothers me when I see a group like Team Jonesboro, and I see the police chief and the fire chief out, and the athletic director for Arkansas State University out with a private entity promoting tax increases. If they want to go out with our mayor and our city council and have that debate in front of the public, in a public forum, great. But when they join a private group and lobby for a tax increase with a private group like this, that just gives me a bad feeling. Arkansas State built a tremendous football stadium with private money, and I applaud them for doing that. So why are they out trying to raise my taxes? They're raising their fees, they're raising tuition, and now the athletic director, who just raised millions of dollars to build a football stadium, is out there trying to raise my taxes. Folks, I used to have season tickets to ASU football and basketball.
Didn't you? You played in the 70s, right?
I did. Thanks for reminding me.
Well, you're welcome. I think we should you should point that out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm a big ASU supporter. ASU provided great opportunities for me, but they have outpriced the product for me. I can no longer afford to go buy a season ticket, so they lost my business. Now, this is a good example, I think. I hope your listeners can follow it. But this tax is going to cost me $100. That's the number they're putting out there. An individual impact is for a sales tax for an individual is $100
a year.
A year,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
So that $100 I can no longer spend the way I want. That may have been to go to an ASU football game. So not only did they lose my season ticket, that now they're advocating a tax that I would have used to go to a football game. But folks, we are giving the government $18 million, $9 million for safety issues, police and fire, and $9 million for amenities. They're taking $9 million out of the pockets of the people. This is, I know I've dominated the conversation here.
Well, no.
Let me throw one more thing in
Okay,
real quick.
go ahead.
Real quick. One of the things they say is it's just a happy meal a month. It's just a happy meal a month. I've heard that almost at every presentation. Folks, it's a $9 million happy meal. That's the bottom line. A
year.
A year happy meal. And it's not just a little bit of change.
Yeah.
It's significant power that we're giving the government and taking away from the people.
We're talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan. So can you address a little bit real quick before we go? The two issues being combined is a problem. Police and fire. A lot of people want to support that. A lot of people want to give the police more funding, want to get the fire more funding, but they're not so sure about the amenity. But even on the amenity side, even if you just take the amenities by itself, I mean, I would much rather know exactly where the money's going to go. I mean, maybe I do want a pool. Maybe I want an aquatic center, a taxpayer-funded aquatic. Maybe I want that. Oh, I'd like to be able to go and vote for that, not vote for that and maybe this or maybe that. You know what I mean? Like I don't understand why they didn't do it that way.
Well, I do. I mean, if you want to market a tax increase, this is how you market it. Jonesboro has already built about $2 million on the shooting complex. We got the money from Game and Fish. We have a couple of years to finish that project. If we don't finish it, we have to repay the money. Mm-hmm. So we've already built some of the infrastructure for the aquatic center. So we've already invested in that. Now, what do you think the nonpartisan or unbiased committee is going to choose to do first?
Right.
Very high possibilities.
The shooting range and the pool.
Yeah, but they've done a great job in marketing this because everybody's going to get exactly what they want. I mean, it's almost like health care for all. Mm-hmm. You don't have to pay your medical bills anymore. You go to the hospital, you're fine. Everybody gets all they want. Instead of having it very clear and very specific, we're going to vote this up or down. That's the way it is in the legislature. It's why I voted against the highway bill. In order to hear another bill, you had to vote this one down. Same thing is true here. If you want to vote on up or down for the police and fire, the only way to do that is to defeat this bill. Now that, again, I'm not advocating for or against it. That's just the electoral process. Yeah. The only way to have other choices is to, vote something up or down. Again, the governor did that with the highway bill. Julie Mayberry had the bill that wouldn't have raised taxes. Yeah. And in order to hear that, we had to vote against the governor's bill. It appears that you're against highways. That's the way my opponent will say.
It appears you're against highways.
Yeah, Dan's against highways. I'm all for highways. I think that's government's job is to fund those. But we could have done that
without raising taxes on the people.
Yeah, and I think our lieutenant governor came out kind of for that idea and said, there are other ways to do this. Absolutely. And just to remind your voters, Paul, we've got a bunch of taxes getting ready to hit real quickly. Yeah. We got the gasoline tax increase coming.
October 1st.
We got the internet tax coming quickly. Mm-hmm. We've got the cell phone tax. Your listeners may not remember that. We have a cell phone tax coming. Mm-hmm. We have a water hike increase tax coming. Yeah. So we're facing not just this tax. Again, you get to a special election. Guess what? You get this done before people are really looking.
Before they realize their gas taxes have gone up, all these other taxes have gone up.
All these other taxes are coming up, and this is just one more. Yeah. So, again, I hope people will go vote.
Just go vote.
Go vote. Get people out, and I appreciate the opportunity here to educate people. And if anybody'd like to visit with me about this, I love these discussions and debates. Had somebody thought that I was mad at other people, and I hadn't written anything, and I asked why they thought I was mad, and they said, because you have the other position. And I said, look, these people and I were friends before this. We'll be friends after it. Iron sharpens iron, and that's the way our nation was built, on debate and persuasion. And that's what I want to do, is debate these issues and persuade, and I have confidence that the voters will make a good decision here. And if the voters choose to tax themselves, then let's move forward. If they choose not to, then let's look together and see what our path forward is to continue to make Jonesboro the best city in Northeast Arkansas and one of the best in our state and nation.
State Representative Dan Sullivan.
Thank you,
Always
Paul.
great to talk to you, sir.